favorites. And we are cruising along. It is finally Jake's pick. Congratulations, Jake.
No, congratulations to you, good listeners. We are finally out of Dickey's top 10.
I hope we are... your next movie, I am excited because what in God's name do you have in store for us?
I don't know.
No? I looked at the top 10 list at one point. I don't remember what movie's next, but you get to listen to your movie. What movie?
Oh, so this is my 10th favorite movie of all time. Oh, by the way, we have a special guest with us here. His name is Drew. He is my old roommate from college. He is responsible for at least 3 of these movies on my list.
Is responsible the word you really want to use?
And he was here last week, too, if you tuned in for that one.
That's true.
Absolutely.
That's Drew.
Oh,
That's you.
Hello, hello.
This is going to be great.
He will be here a couple of different times throughout my list. You'll see him, but you'll see him and then he'll go away, and then you'll see him again.
I do that sometimes.
Like a ninja. Anyway, my top 10, my 10th favorite movie of all time is the sci-fi classic Blade Runner, the original, not 2049.
which cut?
I like them all.
Okay, fair enough.
You can like anything you want, Jake.
The reason I like this is because of this gentleman here. It was kind of my gateway drug movie. There we go. To
Love drugs.
That makes
Sorry,
it
go
better.
on.
just rub it on gums. It was my gateway to film noir, liking that style, liking sci-fi of the 70s, 80s era. It's just a good movie.
What were some, just real quick, what were some other of those era sci-fi movies that he showed you?
What was that really bad one we watched with Nate? A dog and his
A
boy
boy
or
and his dog.
That was
Boy and his-
horrible. There's Logan's Run, which
I like Logan's
upon
Run.
rewatch, I don't like it that much. The Last Starfighter, that was fun.
Now, did I make you watch Outland?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
That one's pretty fun. I mean, it's Sean Connery. It's a space western. What do you want?
Ooh.
That's what led to me wanting to watch Cowboys versus Aliens or whatever it is.
I stand by. It's not that bad.
Cowboys and Aliens.
Is that what it is?
Not
Cowboys
versus-
and...
no.
See, I don't even remember.
It's Cowboys and Aliens.
What else?
I will never forgive
What
a
else did we
campfire
watch?
for covering up
Repo
Olivia
Man,
Wilde.
like the 70s Repo Man. It's called something different.
Oh, with
Repo Man.
Sure.
You
With
talking
is that
Harry Dean
Emilio?
Stanton and Emilio?
I don't remember. I remember it being a musical.
Oh
No, that's not it.
no, you're thinking of Repo the Genetic Opera, and
There we go.
I did not watch that with you. That I
Who
think
watched that with me?
I think that was Greg's fault.
Greg.
Doesn't seem like he would like anything that interesting.
Well, in any case.
What else? I mean, you got all the noir stuff too.
Wait, I think the context in which I originally introduced it to you was for a one of my film courses where I wrote a paper comparing Blade Runner with Kiss Me Deadly. Mm-hmm. And picking apart all the noir elements.
And then we started talking about all the this movie. For as much as I love it, and I do love it, and we'll get into that. Another reason I love it is just the lore surrounding it, because of all of the different cuts and all of the different drama and just how popular it is. In fact, Drew he brought a prop here. I think that was a 2006 release.
I feel like it was earlier, but certainly early
Pull it up, I'll zoom in on it.
2000s.
Tune into our YouTube channel to check this out. That's
It came in a briefcase, and it's got all of the different cuts on it.
Now, is it actually a briefcase or is it supposed to be the eye test thing?
It's supposed to be the Voight-Kampff machine.
Thank you. I could not remember what it was called.
wow. That is a doozy.
It's got a little car thingy that's really cool in it too.
It comes with a replica of the spinner.
Nice.
It comes with a replica of the origami unicorn.
Nice.
It comes with this little lenticular 3D doodad that doesn't want to come out of the case, so there it stays.
That's not like a dossier folder then?
And it comes with this neat folder with all sorts of neat art prints in it from the Sid Mead collection. And there it is. And
Sticking out.
it came in 3 different versions when it was originally sold, as if the 5 versions of the film packaged therein weren't enough. You could buy this set in DVD, Blu-ray, or HD DVD.
Oh yeah, how's that doing?
HD DVD?
Yeah, how's that doing?
It is the format of the future.
It was arguably better than Blu-ray, but much like Betamax before it got the death blow.
Now that was one of the red case, right?
Sure was.
They'd be right next to each other in the video store. It'd be the Blu-ray and the HD DVD. HD DVD.
I don't remember. Did
Yeah,
you have to have a
HD
special
DVD.
player for that one?
I think I know why they got rid of it now. It's because it's hard to say.
What were you saying?
Yeah, you sure did need a separate player, although they did make a very slim few players that could do Blu-ray and HD DVD. And quite famously, the Xbox 360 had an attachment that would let it play HD DVD. So there were certain bundles of the 360 that came with. I think King Kong was the one normally packaged with
Oh
it.
yeah. What was the
that was all right,
format
though.
that you had to have like the online account to watch the disc?
I had one of those.
That was
Yep.
the DivX discs.
Thank you. I could
Not
not
to be
think of it.
confused with the DivX video codec. Sort of a different thing, but yeah, it was hooked to the phone line. It expired within a
Yep.
certain period of when you watch it.
And of course, it didn't do well for a while because why can't you just buy something and pop it in instead? Like,
Well, to be fair, Blu-rays are going away now too, so it's all just gonna. Sorry, guys.
they are going away
Absolutely.
for good.
Well, they're putting less and less money into making Blu-rays.
Well,
and
that's
eventually
that's
they're
been the thing for a while. I don't
Eventually
think
they're just gonna-
physical media will not ever go away. People thought books were going to be gone,
Books
and they've
makes
come
a little
back.
bit more sense, but
Books are more expensive to make.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you really like. There's, I mean, audiobooks, I guess, exist. But
What I
there's
think
no
it'll-
really other.
What I think will probably end up happening is like what's happened with Amazon and their publishing company, where they will publish or print something like Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along-a-thon.
classic. I love
They
that.
print it to order,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably what will end up happening.
That makes sense, actually.
I always get that mixed up with that Fantastic Fear of Everything, and I don't know why. Is it the
I
cover? Do the covers look similar?
I don't know what that second.
That's the
one is.
Simon Pegg
Particularly.
thing. I don't know why in my head when I hear Dr. Horrible, I see the Simon Pegg shot of. I don't know why.
Anyway, Blade
I was
Runner.
like, wait, what? Side note.
Anyway, that's why this is my favorite. It's attached to a lot of memories I have from college, a lot of early memories from college too. So, because I think we probably watched that. I think we probably watched that as a result of talking about that.
Doesn't
and
exactly
then-
peg me as a college movie. Oh, yeah, we're gonna stay up late. We're gonna have a beer and watch Blade Runner.
You say that, but we stayed up. We stayed up every night to watch. How did it go? Family Guy. Was Twilight Zone first, or was Quantum Leap first?
Classics.
Quantum Leap, then Twilight Zone.
Yeah, it was Family Guy, Quantum Leap, Twilight Zone, then bed every night. But
Bed's a great show. I
Bed
watch
is
it every night.
Bed is a great show.
You know, if memory serves, Jake, this was also your introduction to Laserdisc.
That's right. It was.
Do you have a Laserdisc?
Sure
of
do.
Blade Runner? I would assume you would.
Isn't it the Criterion
Had
one?
to get
Didn't
the
you say?
Criterion, yeah.
Yeah.
That long before this set existed, the Criterion had just incredible. You know, it was one of the only ways in the 90s / early 2000s to get sort of the original theatrical cut of the film, and it had all sorts of great special features. Like Sid Mead, the artist who sort of did the conceptual design for the dystopian world of Blade Runner, had a lot of great concept art that's all included on that Laserdisc as a special feature. Just very cool.
Now, what are for the people listening, which I don't know how many would know, what are the differences in all the cuts? You're probably the best at explaining them.
Okay, so setting aside all the various fan edits, of which there are many, there are essentially 5 main cuts of the film. There is the original 1982 U.S. theatrical release. This is the version that was available on home video in the States from the early 80s straight through until 1990-91. If you saw a version on home video, this is probably what you saw. It had sporadic narration from Harrison Ford throughout the movie.
That he hated doing, I thought.
It depends. There are stories that go both ways, but it's the sort of thing that's very interesting to see once or twice because it helps flesh out the world and the characters. But is it my favorite way of watching it? Probably not.
Not to cut you off, is it similar to like the cuts of Donnie Darko where a lot of people like the theatrical because it doesn't explain anything, but then others like me like the director's cut because it's split into those chapters of the book they're reading and it actually explains more?
Yeah, I think that's a very apt comparison. And similar to like we were talking about off mic, they did a thing similar to Brazil where the original theatrical cut tacks on sort of a happy ending. And part of the happy ending was cobbled together using extra footage they shot for the opening sequence of The Shining that they never ended up using.
That's right, the car. Drawing.
I remember hearing about that because it's like one of those IMDb trivias that anyone could have written. It's like Stanley Kubrick directed a shot of this movie. Like, yes
and no,
but not like for the movie. They just reused the Colorado driving like helicopter shot, right?
Sure. And what warrants mentioning about the original theatrical cut, too, is if you're brave enough to venture into the Blade Runner expanded universe and start reading some of the book sequels written by K.W. Jeter, the books are sequels to that original theatrical cut with the happy ending. Warrants mentioning.
Question.
Yeah.
So this world has, like, no vegetation. That's, like, a whole point, and especially in the sequel, they elaborate on that further. So how do you cut from that to, like, the Colorado driving where there's trees everywhere?
Well, that's part of why it's so happy. They get out of the bleak dystopian city, they get off to the countryside, and have a happy life of indeterminate length. So that was the theatrical release in 1982. Around that same time, when the film was released in Europe, they got a slightly different cut of the movie, usually just referred to stateside as the international cut. That movie has the narration, it still has the happy ending, but it includes just a couple more shots of violence. We're not talking minutes of footage, we're talking about frames.
Oh.
During the chase sequence towards the end, you see a little bit more of Roy shoving the nails through his hand. When Zora gets retired, you see, I think, an extra gunshot or two, just little things here and there.
Going through the glass.
Yeah, that's right. So, not an enormous difference, but as we know, the MPAA cares about very small, tiny, seemingly inconsequential differences.
Because they're consistent, right?
Oh, most certainly.
And nothing wrong there.
Now, the international cut is what you would have seen prior to 1992, but if you had, like, the Laserdisc version. And a handful of videotape releases stateside towards the mid to late 80s were the international cut. Then, I think it makes sense to talk about the work print cut. So, Blade Runner famously flopped quite badly when it was released in theaters in 1982. But throughout the 80s, into the early 90s, theaters would do midnight showings, they do revival showings, and it gained a cult following. And roundabout, and I could be off a year or two, but around 1990, they were doing a showing of the film at the Egyptian Theater, which I think is in LA. And the studio had inadvertently, instead of sending the theatrical print to the theater, they inadvertently shipped a work print version that was originally shown to, I think, distributors to try to sell them on the movie. This was a markedly different version of the film. Totally different opening credit sequence, different shots throughout, different narration. It still had narration, but a lot of the text was different.
How long is it comparatively?
I haven't watched them side by side for years. It wasn't a huge difference. It was more swapping out scenes and dialogue rather than adding. And so they accidentally shipped this to the theater, and people saw this cut of the movie they never knew existed, and they lost their minds. There was huge campaigns, letter writing campaigns to the distributor, to the studio, trying to convince them to release that cut of the movie.
# release the work print cut.
Absolutely. Snyder before Snyder. And the studio wasn't quite prepared to do that for a handful of reasons, but the happy compromise they struck was releasing in 91 or 92, I don't have the date off the top of my head, but what they referred to as the director's cut. It was called that, but, Ridley Scott never really had Final Cut. That's just a marketing ploy. That version is probably what you would have seen if you ever saw it on DVD or on television anytime between 1991 and, like 05. This version removes almost all of the Harrison Ford narration and trims off the happy ending. It also adds a little bit of the dream sequence where Deckard's playing the piano when he sees the unicorn.
That's right.
Depending on who you believe, that the footage of the unicorn may or may not be leftover footage from the movie Legend, but that's neither here nor there. And then fast forward to, I believe it was 05, it could have been 06. This is where Ridley Scott actually gets the ability and the wherewithal to release what's truly his director's cut, which, for marketing purposes, was called the Final Cut. That builds a little bit more on what the 91 director's cut was doing. It leaves off the happy ending. You don't have the narration.
The unicorn's in there.
The unicorn is in there, and there's a little bit more of it. And vitally, what it does is it reinserts the extra violence from the international cut that was not in the 91 director's cut. That's now in the Final Cut version.
And real quick, if we didn't mention it already, that is the version we watched. All of us watched this week.
Yep,
So we're talking about the Final Cut.
So there's little additional tweaks here and there. I think he added in a little bit of CG just to clean things up a little bit, because
Yeah, I noticed that.
when they released the Final Cut, it did get a theatrical re-release too. Jake, I don't remember if you were with us, but for our college sci-fi club, we took a little field trip and we saw that in theaters when they did the re-release. And, they just polished things up a little bit to make it a little cleaner.
I think I was with you for that.
Yeah, I feel like you would have been. So that's talking your ear off a little bit, but that, in a nutshell, that's the 5 versions.
Yeah, I think I was telling it, like I don't remember what cut I watched the first or second time, because I bought the DVD that has the 4 cuts that came out around the time the Final Cut came out.
Mm.
And I remember I just put it in. I'm like, well, I don't know. I'll just watch this Final Cut. That's probably the best, which ends up being the one we watch now. But I have a bit of a sad story with watching it the first time. I went to Disney for a high school trip.
Disney
and
sucks, I hear.
and on the way there, we stop at a gas station, and they have a huge movie selection. And I bought like 3 or 4 movies for like $5 each. One of them was a copy of Blade Runner. And it's funny. It's not the greenish poster you see. It's the bluish poster.
Sure.
So that was the cover. So I don't think it actually. I'm not sure if it had the Final Cut that I know of. I know I saw the Final Cut the second time I watched it. But this first one, on the way back, my friend had a portable DVD player. Terrible idea. Terrible, stupid idea to watch anything like that. And here we are watching Blade Runner, which is, the sound is a very big part of it. How do you say his name, the composer?
Vangelis.
Vangelis, who just recently passed away. And this was right after he did Chariots of Fire, too. So here he is. I actually, for a lot of times, I don't like 80s score music like that, but I really like this one, and that was what's the word I'm looking for? Reinforced by watching the sequel, where they use a lot of his themes, and you can barely hear anything. You got that little portable thing cranked, and we get about an hour in, which, if you know, in Blade Runner, that's like 4 days worth of. Because the pacing is so slow, and it was me and another guy who was like a year younger than me, so I'm like 18, he's got to be 16 or 17 at the time, and we're just like, yeah, I can't do this. We're on a bus, I can't hear it. I'm going to watch this at home. He took the disc out and he handed it to me, and I dropped it onto the ground, and it's a 50-50 shot.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
And
it
guess
might
what
have
side
broke.
landed on the ground? And I tried, the bus like moved, and it started to slide. So I tried to put my foot down so it would hit my foot, and I stepped on it.
No.
And he's watching me, and I'm careful with discs, and I was careful then, and I didn't mean to step on it because it slid right under my foot.
Oh no.
So-
I just froze.
You're saying the plastic side fell down, right?
The reading side.
So, wasn't it you we were talking about a long time ago? As much damage as that can do, it's actually more dangerous for it to fall on the label side.
That's correct.
Because the
Interesting.
label side can get scuffed off, and then if the label side gets scuffed off, there's no fixing it.
The label side is the part with the data. All of the data is printed on basically the underside of the label. The plastic side is the protective shield. That is the more protected of the
I
two
did not
parts.
know that.
Now,
So what happens when it's a double-sided disc? It's just
laminated.
That's more
in the
like how
center,
they
isn't
would
it?
construct laser discs. You know, it's
Yeah.
essentially two discs that are just glued together, more or less. So the most sensitive part of a double-sided disc is sandwiched in the middle, and you can't really get to it.
So yeah, I had dropped it, and it's funny now to know. Okay, so the less important side got scuffed, but there was a real deep scratch, and I was like, now I have to. I'm 2 hours into this long drive home. I'm not gonna know if this works because we're not gonna put it back in. And I remember I got home, and the first thing I did after I brought all my stuff in, I ran downstairs to my big TV. I put it in, and it worked. And I think I finished it that night, and I don't know what cut it was. I'm gonna guess Final Cut, but that release might not have it. And I didn't really like it
Did you
because
say that
dumb
was-
18-year-old was like, this is boring.
Was that your first time you watched it? You
Yeah.
said? It's kind of funny your first time was on a portable DVD player. Cause so was mine.
Hey,
You ready for this? Back in the days when Blockbuster existed, we
I know a little something about Blockbuster, don't I, Drew?
yeah. So yeah, we used to be able to rent movies like crazy. Regardless,
Yes.
I saw
Oh,
Rent
like Redbox.
movies.
like Redbox.
there was nothing before.
Wait,
Redbox.
you mean doesn't Netflix do that? Like where they like send you a DVD? and
Not anymore. They wound that down about a month ago, I think.
only a month ago?
It was
Oh
shockingly
my.
The
recently.
fact that it
As
was
of recording
doing
this.
you're right. It's insane. But
You were
anyway-
saying.
Anyway, no, it's so I can't remember where I was on. I think.
I think you were driving.
Yeah, I was.
Well,
the one
you weren't the
driving.
one driving. I mean, I wouldn't be
No,
I
surprised.
don't know. This is Dickey we're talking about.
That's true. He's probably driving with his feet and like smoking something. I don't know.
I think my family. I think we were going to Ohio, and we were. I was looking for some.
I'm sorry, you're getting loud.
Ohio.
Well, I listen. I have seen the levels, and I know what.
Are you looking at his computer right now?
I'm not right now.
So
but
how
I
can
have-
you see the
I have
levels?
Heard old recordings.
We
where
can
I
hear you
don't
right
even
now,
sound
and I
like
know
I'm in the room.
Here, I'm gonna unplug that.
No,
Okay.
let me say my story. It's not that long. It's really not even that important. All I'm simply saying is on a car ride from Michigan to Ohio, my dad mentioned when we were in Blockbuster trying to find a movie to rent. He's like, "Oh, I remember Blade Runner. I like that. Okay, I'll watch it." I think I was like 13 or 14 years old. I'm
Oh,
like, this
man.
movie sucks. And then, yeah, of course, I rewatched it about, I don't know, several years after. I was like, oh no, this is actually good.
Yeah. Yeah, my second time was that was like 2013, and like 2016. My friend, who was a big sci-fi fan and a big 80s movies fan, had never seen it, and even he's like, I don't know how that's possible. Everything on paper should point to, I've seen this, and I haven't. So we watched it, and he's like, what cut are we watching? I'm like, I don't know.
Whatever.
I had this problem 3 years ago. I'm like, how about let's do the final cut. It's funny, I bought that 4-cut release before I remember, I didn't go home and put it in. I went home and ordered the new one, then put it in that night and realized now I'm going to have 2 copies. I don't have that copy anymore. I lent it to a friend because he wanted to watch it, and he never gave it back.
Is this friend watching?
No. I wonder what he's up to. Nice guy, jerk. Anyway. Oh, real quick, I remember there is another Shining connection, Joe Turkel, who plays...
That's absolutely right.
what is his name? in the movie?
Tyrell.
Tyrell. He was in The Shining as...
Oh, isn't that the bartender?
Yes.
Certainly is.
I saw the face.
And,
I was like, wait, that is someone.
And he
What's his
also
name?
just recently died, like
That's
within the
right.
last couple months.
Yeah.
Really?
What were you saying?
The guy that's in Mulan. He's in it too.
James Hong.
Yeah.
I love James Hong.
James Hong.
I knew he was gonna say that.
It's
I
so
said
funny.
I do.
Yeah, when you see him, because he's the guy with the eyes, right? I was
Yeah.
like, hey, there he is. I think they might have brought that up at the Oscars or something.
I wouldn't be
Or
surprised.
something, made a
if they
joke
did.
about it
Yeah.
because he's been in like 200 movies.
Oh god, yeah.
He's got to be like what, like 95?
Gotta be.
He's definitely up. Yeah, I don't know how old he is.
So, Drew, let me ask you this. I don't think I've ever asked you this before. So, Blade Runner is based on the Philip K. Dick book.
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Have you read that?
Like back in high school and not since. So my memories are vague.
When did you graduate? Is it 04?
05.
05.
We are the same
05.
age.
Okay.
I guess I'm a little older than you, but not much.
3 months, you know?
Who's counting?
You.
So you're
You
born
count.
like, what, is it 87 then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
He's also born on the 17th, right?
that is a true
Yep.
fact.
So
Oh,
I'm
March.
12, 17. He's 3, 17.
Wow.
You're 6, 17. And
I
then
know like
Dickey's
5 people who have that
5,
birthday.
24.
Oh, wow,
Is that what
that's
it
so
is?
good.
Which is
Yeah, loser.
It's almost in
It's almost as nice as the number 17, but it's not quite as nice.
integer.
What?
17? Like, you know how numbers can go like you double them, double it, double
I
it?
think he's trying to say that it can be 17 can be doubled into 24.
Almost, 'cause
but
it's
it
34.
but I was gonna say it can't.
Yes, but
Let's. You have
but
now
there's a
witnessed
vocab
Dickey
term.
math.
But there's a vocab term for that.
Do
Dickey
you
math.
feel your life has changed?
I'm fully convinced.
Because I was trying to say. I can't believe I just called
I'm
it.
fully convinced that you were supposed to be born on the 17th, and in that 1 week extra you were in there, your vocal cords like popped. So you came out wailing, and you haven't stopped since. And you're almost 30.
Hey, you're closer than
I know,
am.
I am. I'm just saying. I'm guessing that's what that extra week is. She's 24th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, extra week. There's
Anyway,
an extra
Blade
week. of
Runner.
it.
And do androids dream of electric sheep? Yes, I read it forever ago. I remember very little. I remember, like, one of the parts that stood out to me for some reason is J.F. Sebastian in his little apartment. There was some device he'd look into, and there was, like, a guy trapped in, like, sort of a Sisyphus type deal where he's, like, rolling a rock, and I don't know. It was super nihilistic. That device briefly makes an appearance in the movie because you see Pris looking into some sort of binocular type deal, and that, you know. But from what I recall, the movie had not a lot of bearing on the book. But, you know.
One thing and to get back to the movie, one thing I really love about this is for a early 80s movie, there is a big scope to it. Like
And yet it feels so
personal.
like a condensed or like the scope feels narrower because of how it's shot, but then when you go to those wide shots, it feels
then it goes
bigger.
like that. And I we're not gonna. Well, I suppose we will talk about Blade Runner 2049. But one of my things is that why I prefer the first one, other than nostalgia, is just for some reason it is so impressive to me that they were able to do that in the 80s with very practical things, and now
2049 is just a lot bigger.
yeah, it's a lot bigger, but it's all generated with computers.
And it feels like that too. Where I think the original Blade Runner, especially with like the kind of sets that they built, and just the general cinematography and the way they shot
Oh yeah,
everything,
just the vibe of the whole thing, the lighting, like
They're two different things.
it feels like it was made. And this isn't supposed to be like diminishing, but it feels like it was made for like $10. But like that's a good thing. Like
Maybe not that. I wouldn't say that quite.
I mean, I get okay. $10 is maybe a
It
little.
feels
bit
a
of
little more
exaggeration.
resourceful.
yeah.
That's a better way.
Yeah,
to phrase
they
it.
use what they have, and it looks really good.
That's a better way to. Phrase it. I didn't want to seem diminish.
Yeah, I don't want to knock on Villeneuve because what he created was really good.
I'm sorry. Who?
I don't know how to say his name. Villeneuve is what I thought his name was.
Isn't that how you say it?
Villeneuve.
It's
Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
It's Villeneuve.
Yes.
It's French. I know this much.
French Canadian. As somebody who gets made fun of the way he says things, I have to throw some shade.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In Blade Runner 2049, spoilers. Where is Deckard? Where does he go to meet Deckard? What city is that?
Oh no!
Las Vegas.
That's wrong. That
Vegas.
is not how you say that.
It's Las Vegas.
Vegas.
Vegas. That's what I'm saying.
You're saying Vegas.
You said
That's
Vegas
what I said.
every week. Every week.
See, it's not even like a different way to pronounce it. He's mispronouncing.
And now I'm
Why
starting.
did I say it?
And now I'm starting to think he's doing it on purpose.
Did you just say Las Vegas? That's what it is.
Vegas.
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 That's what I said. Vegas.
Every week. Every week.
Regardless.
Yeah. I was gonna say, talking about 2049, I like it better, and it is kind of. I didn't watch Blade Runner when I was younger, too much younger because I was, at the end of high school. But I think it's all about connection, and I didn't connect to this first Blade Runner fully until this time. I was like, no, this is really good. The last 2 times I watched it, other than watching it on a bus, that second time watching it, I remember hitting the info because my friend and I had to go to the bathroom. It came back he's like, how far in are we? I go, we're close to the end. I think it was before they go to the Tyrell building. I'm like, we have an hour left.
See, I don't.
What?
See, I think that too, though. I used to feel that length too, but this time watching it just flew by. I was like,
It's not that long of a movie.
No, it's less than 2
no,
hours.
it's just intentionally paced.
I thought, because before I watched it, I'm like, this is gonna be a slog, especially after what we watched last week. But no, I looked at the runtime. I was like, it's an hour 57. I remember this feeling it was a year long. It's not that bad.
and it's weird because what I still hold to, and it's a personal opinion, 2049 is almost an hour longer, and for me, it moves way faster. But that's me.
Is it also because you think they go outside of the city?
I think that's why it's a great sequel, because it expands the world and does things different. And I was noticing, conversations in the first movie are just differently done than a normal shot reverse shot. And in Villeneuve's sequel, it's much more basic in that aspect because a lot of it is more symmetrical.
Yeah.
It's a lot different how it's made. And when I was watching in the first act of the movie, I was like, am I feeling this wrong? It's not feeling the same as it did. Of course, it's not as when Jake and I watched it opening night. That's the only time I had seen it before. And watching this, by about the time he leaves L.A. and gets attacked by those guys out in the junkyard, I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel it. And then when you get to the last 40, 50 minutes, that's what, everything with Deckard is where it clicked for me this time. Like, oh no, this is great. I still love this. Not that I wasn't enjoying it. I was like, is this as good as I remember? And then it clicked, and it's not really falling action, but it kind of feels like it. Just up to the end, it was like, this is so good.
Now, I will say, if the pacing of the original is a little bit of a concern, and if it feels like it drags a little bit, I would encourage you to check out the original theatrical cut / the international cut, because a lot of the scenes in the movie that are just sort of atmospheric, flying over the city, panning through the city streets, totally free of dialogue, all of that was filled with narration. So that sort of helps keep the pace along because you're continuing to learn things. You're still getting more information beyond what's just visual.
That makes sense. Is there... I didn't mean to cut you off, but is there somewhere, because I don't know if I've ever seen the theatrical cut. I want to see it. Do you know if there's anywhere that it's
Right here.
Well, okay.
What is so this particular set I have is out of print. But that being said, there is a relatively new Blu-ray package that has all the prints on it as well.
Oh, okay, grab that.
Yes. This very one.
I figured it'd be nearly impossible to find it streaming-wise.
Streaming, I really couldn't tell you what the deal is, but it's around.
I would believe that it used to be on HBO Max when 2049 was on HBO Max, but since
Is 2049 on Max anymore?
No.
Oh.
It was on Netflix for a second.
Ever, for 2 years, and then it's just gone.
Dang. Because I want to rewatch that now too after watching it. It's like,
yeah.
I want to see 2049.
We went movie shopping earlier today, and I was like, I need to get that.
Yeah, it's a good release. It still is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. Everyone
certainly.
talked that up. He deserved that Oscar. Those effects. I like how movies that are starting to win special effects aren't the big flashy superhero movies, that type. It's stuff that's using it in certain ways. Like Blade Runner 2049 uses it a lot, but a lot of it isn't in the actual technology. Because not in movies, everything's digital, but they kept a lot of the more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the same vibe that the first Blade Runner and Alien, the first Alien movie, have, where it feels very...
lived in.
Thank you. It's old. I think the first sequence of first scene of 2049 when he sits down to talk to Dave Bautista. He pulls out a device that scans his eye, and it's like glitching on him.
Yes.
And I go, that's great. Just they keep that. They could have made it all polished, and a lot of the environments look polished until he goes outside the city and goes to Vegas. So I like how it's. I gotta get my thoughts together. It's similar to Fury Road, where it has to be a sequel / kind of reboot of sorts. It's a direct sequel more than Fury Road is.
Yeah.
But they kind of have to toe the line between. It has to be familiar enough to the IP for people who like it, but it also has to be a new, updated thing, and I think it treads that line perfect.
It did it perfectly.
And
No, but
I was
the
going to say, they
worst-
couldn't have picked a better person to head
But
that.
the absolute
Yeah.
worst part is that it tanked. Because
What a shame.
Because it's so good, and it makes sense because the original Blade Runner also tanked. It doesn't. It's not a movie that makes a lot of money. It's just sad because it's so well made. Especially like I said, even the original, even though the let's say the original Blade Runner, even though a lot of people were kind of iffy on the narration, but still, I
read a funny.
I just wish they made more money.
I read a funny thing on around the time 2049 came out. I was reading like, why aren't people going to see this?
They
And it was
bullshit
like,
marketing.
one, the marketing. Two, it's almost 3 hours long and it's very slow. But the best and funniest one, it might have been Pete Travers for Rolling Stone. It was someone who said like, millennials don't like movies that tell you that you're not special. Because you get to that moment where he realizes he's not the kid.
Yep.
And it's basically the whole movie is saying, like, you're not special. There are other people who are special, but you having, like, dying for a cause becomes, like, the central theme of it and not you're special. It's I remember reading that and just laughing. I was like, I get that.
All our parents gave us participation awards.
Well, let's not forget the original Blade Runner took, basically the better part of a decade to really gain a sizable audience. I
Yep.
still have
Oh,
high
yeah.
hope that 2049 will get there as well.
You're right. That's a good point.
And it does have an
Cult
audience
classic
because of Deacon's winning was the big thing. And then also there's still people who really like it. But it's mostly like film community people,
Yeah.
and lesser so the masses that aren't as big into film.
Sure.
So I do have an interesting question for y'all. How in the world, because this came out in 82,
82.
so what?
35
Three-
years? Is that what you're trying to guess the
No,
difference? Okay.
3 years after Star Wars? 4 years after Star Wars?
5 years after the first one, 2
5.
years after the second one.
And arguably in one of the most solid summers for science fiction ever been. Because 82, you got E.T.,
E.T..
you got Blade Runner, you've got The Thing.
Ooh,
right.
Good year.
Just-
There's another big one, isn't there?
There was. I'm drawing a blank, but just across the board, it was solid.
What is it? Eric,
Okay.
someone keep talking. I'm going to
So the question is, how does Harrison Ford look so much younger than what he did as Han Solo?
Because Harrison Ford is simply a god amongst men.
I guess
He-
because think about it. In A New Hope,
Yeah.
like actually in all the Star Wars movies, he's got a chisel. Like he's very like his jawline is like you
It's-
can see the lines.
like, I
It's
wanna-
got to be the hair, but in like Blade
the
Runner,
hair.
he's
The hair makes him look younger.
it's
Like-
got to be because in Blade Runner he has a more rounded face, and I mean it's a part of the character that he's like downtrodden. But
Listen, I am about as straight as you could get, but there isn't a thing that I would not do to young Harrison Ford. Because that man, he is...
I'm going to slap you if you say no homo. I'm going to slap you. It's June when we recorded this.
should be
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
and,
just saying,
you want to
that
tell
man
them the
is
other two that we just found for 82?
Yes, Jared was helpfully reminding me that 82 was also Star Trek II Wrath of Khan
Oh!
and Tron.
Dang!
So, what a year for
It was a
sci-fi.
great
wow.
sci-fi
I have
year.
all of those movies.
Now, we do have to remember, too, that to be fair, it was a fantastic year in retrospect. But
Yep.
at the
Yeah.
time, Tron was an enormous flop. Blade Runner was an enormous flop.
E.T. was the highest grossing movie of all time.
E.T.
So on
did-
the opposite end.
Phenomenal. Wrath of Khan did pretty all right for itself. But, it certainly in retrospect, it
How did
was
the Thing do?
not
That's,
well.
yeah.
Oh.
That's the worst
Not-
part about like these old sci-fi is that they age great because they're well made, but the time they come out, nobody cares.
Well,
Which is that arguably better? To have lasting,
That's-
a
that's-
lasting
Oh,
audience.
absolutely.
It's funny because that's the
Absolutely.
exact reverse of Marvel.
And that's the
You're
exact
totally
opposite.
right.
And that's the
Every-
exact opposite of what you have said on this podcast before.
What have I said?
You have said before, like, I think movies shouldn't be made to be popular later. They're made to be popular now. I said, that's all movies.
So incredibly taking out of context what I said.
That's exactly what you said. It was so funny.
Because the argument was...
It's from like a year ago.
Yeah, because it's like, it is a movie that's
Jared,
timeless.
we may need the receipts.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure, and we can look at the receipts, if it was movies that are better timeless or if they're better when they're of their era.
We were talking about Mitchells vs. Machines
That's
not
it.
being funny in 5 years, and
You're
were
like,
saying,
well, I think they should
for a
focus
movie
on
like
it now.
this, it
But
needs to be able to click with audiences now. And you were implying that if it clicks with audiences now, it's going to click with them as they age, and that's not necessarily true.
I want to stand up because I need to get on a pedestal, but you can't hear me. Listen.
We can get you a soapbox if you want.
I need a soapbox.
It won't hold you up, but...
Because the same thing with Blade Runner is movies encompass how people feel about that genre at that time.
That's a fair point.
And I think Mitchell's vs. Machines, I think Blade Runner, I think those are both did a very good job of showing what people thought about science fiction. This Blade Runner took place in 2019. Which still throws me off.
That did throw me off when Leon says something about XYZ happened in 2017. I was like, what?
And then the blackout between the movies is in 2020. It's like, of course it is.
That's honestly that's kind of freaky. The fact that that was the big blackout. Like, it was
what's the word?
2020.
How do you say it? Prescient?
Prescient.
Prescient.
I mean, what was your November 2019 not full of giant neon product placement for Atari and Pan Am?
And Coca-Cola.
There's a lot of neon, so I'll give you that.
Well, yeah, Pan Am's not been a thing for like 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Quite famously, it went under just after the filming of Hook.
That's right, because they had to use the plane after the company had shut down, right?
They kept it afloat just an extra couple of months because it was just too good of a pun to not have him fly on Pan Am.
Yep. Oh, what a great movie! Another movie that made money was fine, but then 20 years later, people like us who grew up watching it, it's kind of come back into a popular. But I wonder if once we age out of it, the younger generations won't care. It's probably one of those popular.
I wonder.
It's my movie because I didn't mean to cut you off, but really quickly, 2-second thing. We're gonna be the parents that are showing that movie to our kids. I'm just like, what the heck is this, Dad? It sucks.
Dickey having children is gonna be wonderful. I honestly say that because it's just good. We're gonna hear a bunch of high pitched
You
squeal
have
and
like
be like, "Oh, are those the
mad
kids?"
dad
And
energy,
Sam's
but
gonna
it's
be like, "No, it's
an
Dickey."
octave higher.
I'm very excited for the point
Oh,
where
man.
like,
Wait. Did something happen?
No.
Congratulations!
No.
Are you okay? Are you overwhelmed by all these stupid running gags that are only funny to us?
I'll allow it, but you're on thin ice, counselor.
No, I honestly think I also honestly wonder if what it is when a movie comes out like, okay, how do I say this? When a movie comes out, adults are more grumpy about what they see. But some people buy it and let their kids watch it. The kids grow up loving it, so it develops a following when the kids can actively, on their own, seek out stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and it's Blade Runner. I mean, the cult following is just insane at this point. Like, it keeps getting passed down and passed down and passed down.
Yeah, it is one of those now. It's like, I get it. I finally get it. Like, for a while, it's like, yeah, it's fine. But there's a reason why it's called one of the best sci-fi and just movies in general of all time.
Yeah, that's what the entire time I was thinking that, because like, you know, a lot of these top tens, I'm sure, I don't know if you felt it, Dickie, because some of yours are pretty recent, but like a lot of mine, I haven't watched for 8 or 10 years.
I mean, I really like some of the ones that I picked. I rewatch all the time, but a handful of the ones that it just sticks in you so much because you watch it at that right age.
I mean, like Star Wars. Like,
Exactly.
I'm sure you've watched that within the last...
a million times. Like, it's one of those things you just rewatch all the time. But something like Blade Runner as well. Like, when you watch it at that ripe age of however old you were, it sticks.
I would say that
But
that first Star Wars movie is the only movie I'd say is more influential on the genre than Blade Runner. Like, it'd be
That's
Star
an
Wars than
interesting
Blade
thought.
Runner. I think those are the top two because
That's a very
they're
fair-
kind of two sides of the coin.
Yeah, really hard to.
What do you think about that thought?
It's sort of an apples and oranges thing, because Star Wars inarguably was a much bigger hit on its release, and it had a much wider reach. Where Blade Runner, a lot of the people like influential within the industry knew it and love it, but it didn't really have the cultural reach for quite some time. But I understand the point you're making, certainly.
One is the commercial hit, and the other one is not, but they're both influential for those reasons, and also the look. Like, everyone then tried to do Star Wars big action set-piece stuff, but then there are also people doing the slower, more, I don't want to say artistic, and like saying Star Wars isn't, but
it's more
that approach to it.
There was certainly in, late 80s through mid 90s a whole glut of direct-to-cable or direct-to-video sort of Blade Runner knockoffs, at least aesthetically,
Would you say, I'm trying to think of like the antithesis of Blade Runner, which is all dark and murky and kind of contained. I was going to say the opposite, that has a similar pace and a similar kind of, story, would be Lucas's debut, THX 1138.
Oh, yes.
Everything's white and clean, but it's still slow and kind of contained.
To your earlier point, that's sort of, again, the difference you were talking about between a world that's very lived in versus a world that's exceptionally sterile.
Sort of like Oblivion.
I've never seen it.
It's not, how do I put it? It's good for a sci-fi movie. It is not the type of movie I would expect to see Tom Cruise typically in.
Is it one of those, it's more interesting than it is good?
I think as with most, like, it's a good story on paper, but it is not a lasting story in that if you watch it a second time and you know what's going on, it's not as interesting, but it has that sort of like sterile world feel to. Have you seen it?
No, is that the one with Jodie Foster?
That's Elysium.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, no.
No, it's Morgan Freeman, right?
What?
Morgan Freeman's in it too. Oblivion.
I don't know. It's got the red-haired girl from Mad Men. I think.
Christina Hendricks.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very sterile world, but it's also very clean.
Isn't it most of it on like Earth without much technology though?
Yeah, it's like post.
It is. Morgan Freeman is in it. No, it's not. Christina Hendricks is not in it.
Who is it then?
I cannot say her name. She was a Bond girl. Olga Kurylenko?
Okay.
I think, is that her? Yeah, she was also in, she was Taskmaster in Black Widow. You wouldn't know that because she's in like 2 scenes because they have a large man body double when the mask is on. She's in that. Andrea Riseborough's in it. Melissa Leo's in it. Zoe Bell. Like, small cast, but some notable names in
It's
there.
an interesting movie. I mean, I like it, but I will admit that it might not be a good movie.
What else have you done, Kaczynski? I think he did Tron Legacy and Top Gun Maverick. He did... Oh, and Only the Brave. Anyone watch Only the Brave back in 2017?
Can't say I did.
Heard of it, but I never saw it.
Look at that head. This guy's got a nice pointed head. Good for him.
Well, welcome to when Jared pulls out his computer and starts judging.
It starts going down a rabbit hole.
While we're broadly talking about the aesthetic of Blade Runner, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I was also reminded of Streets of Fire quite a bit.
Is that the one that has a young Willem Dafoe in
It sure
a small
is.
role? I know what you're talking about. I don't know much about
It's very much that same aesthetic where it seems like the movie, it's never daytime,
Good.
Is it always raining?
It seems like it's raining.
Yeah.
Contrary to what The Crow might have you believe, it can rain all the time.
Yeah, isn't Streets of Fire there's something with like music or a band in it too, right?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, the lead singer of a band whose name I can't remember gets kidnapped by Willem Dafoe and his merry band of street hooligans.
Oh my!
And it's great fun. That was one of the reasons I tracked down a HD DVD player, because for the longest time that was about the only format you could find that movie in.
Way to bring it around.
Weird rights issues, but
Wow.
what can I say?
A lot of like Rick Moranis, Diane Lane. Yeah, it says Rick Moranis right there.
That's right.
Amy Madigan, Bill Paxton.
Yeah, an absolutely stacked cast, but only in retrospect. Remind me
Yeah.
what year that was?
84.
84. Okay.
Walter
so
Hill. Is Walter Hill the Warriors guy? Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, you know what
I
I'm
love that
realizing
movie.
through this conversation? For as much as I don't really care for the 80s as a decade,
You sure do like a lot of its
I
movies.
sure do like a lot of the movies.
Well, it's just.
There's just a certain.
I think it's his fault.
I think it's the cream of the crop is with any decade is what we look at. And when you go into like the popular stuff that's not like the greatest of all time, it comes down to what are your preferences, because a lot of like popular 80s movies I hate. I don't like them.
Top Gun.
Yeah, I hate Top Gun. I want it to burn in hell.
He didn't even want to buy a Laserdisc of
Why
it.
would I do
Top Gun
that?
is dumb.
Like
Fair.
I will even admit the sequel is a good movie.
It's better.
And
I
I've
think
never
it.
that
I,
first movie.
I think it deserved to be nominated for Best Picture.
Sure, I'm fine with it, whatever.
I'll just throw out here that movies can be both dumb and good.
That is true. This one's more of like, not to go down this rabbit hole.
We go down this rabbit hole every week.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
week we go down this rabbit hole.
It's hard to enjoy something this like Top Gun that's dumb when it's a classic example of the main character is a piece of garbage and has no redeeming qualities, and we're supposed to care. And most of the time,
I feel like
can't
I'd
even
care
stomach
more.
it
I
with
feel
that
like
one.
I'd care more if I understood how this competition worked, why they were awarded points, and why
why someone else isn't the main character. He's a horrible character. He's
and
terrible.
why
I hate
and
him.
why the air is so yellow.
No, that was the sand
And
Wasn't it?
and the ocean.
Because
and the cars. Well, everything was yellow.
Yeah.
It was like Las
Wildfires
Vegas
again?
in
Is wildfires
2049.
Or like the wildfires. For New York, you remember how New York got?
Yeah.
Oh,
You didn't laugh, so I wanted to make sure.
because that's a very tragic thing that's happening, Dickie.
You can still joke about it.
We can joke about the effect it's having on New York, but poor Canada.
Poor Canada, honestly. Well, anyway, Blade Runner. Anything else you want to mention about Blade Runner?
I have a
got
final
everything.
thought,
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
but I want to make sure everyone else is done
I think
first.
I got everything.
I
in.
want
I'm probably gonna
this
remember in 10
to be
minutes.
the last thought that we leave our audience with.
Okay, I guess really quick, I will say, it really, if you watched this movie a while ago and you remember not liking it, watch it again, because it's one of those things where it ages like wine. Like, it's one of those things where it just takes time to be able to appreciate, and it's gonna go down as one of the cult classics and one of the best sci-fi movies ever. So, that's my final thoughts.
Before my final thought, who is the actor that plays Prince? Is the only who's the actor that plays Prince?
Daryl Hannah.
That's correct.
Okay,
You might know her from Clan of the Cave Bear.
Yep.
And various other things.
Steel Magnolias.
There you go.
Kill Bill.
that's
Splash,
probably the
possibly?
one.
Yeah, that's her.
Yep.
Wall Street. I think she got a Razzie nomination for that.
So yes, Daryl Hannah.
Anyway, I couldn't think of her name, and I wanted to know what her name was. I remember her going down a lot more difficultly than watching this. Like, I remember the fight with her being a lot longer than throws her off, shoots her, dead.
I mean, she like wraps around him in a chokehold with her legs for like 10 minutes. And it's like, what? Okay, what are you doing? You're not really choking him, really. You're just kind of sitting on his shoulders, like trying to see the concert 10 miles away. But
Hey, you don't need to do that if you go to a Fall Out Boy concert.
No, just to go to Taylor Swift.
Anyway, my final thought is this. I have to get everyone's opinion on record on the podcast.
Let's go.
Do we think Harrison Ford is a
Yeah.
replicant?
Yeah,
I
was
knew
waiting
I was
for
ready
it.
for it. I was ready for it.
I know what I think, and I think I'll go last.
Okay.
I feel like I know what he thinks.
I think it's one of those things. Ridley Scott says yes, and Harrison Ford apparently says no. He wants it to be, and he doesn't say he isn't. He just says I want it to be ambiguous, and Ridley Scott's like, oh, he is.
That's really not
then-
answering the question.
I'm not there yet. I was saying, so I hear those, and then like the sequel doesn't really answer it either because Jared Leto's character kind of brings it up, and it's like you were made specifically this, or not. And I go, oh,
Yeah,
I see what you did there. Okay, Denny, you're not trying to answer this. You're letting us. What do you think?
I think he is a replicant. I do.
I would have said no easily because of the lifespan thing, but then the sequel literally in the opening text says like some replicants have extended lifespans. Like, so I guess
I was
he
gonna say
probably
because the
is.
last time I asked you that, you said no, he's not.
Because I remember the first movie talking all about how they have limits on their lifespan, and he lives 30 more years. So it's like, okay, but then the beginning of the third one literally says like some don't have that limit. Like, okay, interesting.
And believe it or not, that also is a major plot point in the book sequels. So just saying. My opinion, theatrical cut and international cut, no, he isn't. Director's cut and final cut, yes, he is. So it's just a matter of perspective.
I'm on board with that. And didn't one of the cuts, it had something to do with the origami unicorn at the end, or the way Edward James Olmos shows up in that. By the way, we got to mention him. I don't mean to go back into it, but we got to mention him. He's
for
beautiful.
He was standing and delivering.
Oh, deep cut. I love it.
That's his Oscar nomination, too. Good for him. And I love he has one scene in the sequel, and when I saw him, I go, hey, this is great.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember...
But he was sitting and delivering in that.
Very good. I don't remember if we actually learn his name in the final cut, but you learn in the theatrical cut that his name is, I think, Gaff?
Gaff.
Yeah.
I think he called him that once.
He might have.
Yeah, also, when you put, I always put subtitles on, the subtitles, when they're not on screen, on the version I had, literally had people's names before they'd say them, and it's like, okay, that's who that is. And then later when they say it, I realize, oh, they haven't established their name at all. I'm reading. That's why I like subtitles. You can, when I see the name, I can attach it to the face much easier.
You know, I haven't watched a movie without subtitles since I watched a couple movies with you, and
it's way better.
You naturally did that.
Well, especially nowadays when they can't mix it for home studios, it sounds like the vocals being solo music.
But anyway, my answer to that question is basically your answer. I think, at least in the version we watched, he is a replicant, and just not one that is made to abide by the same limitations.
And further to your point as regards Gaff, the significance of his little origami things, and the reason why in this collector's set they felt it was important to include the little replica origami unicorn is... Gaff leaves that for him as a way, it's a callback to his dreams of the unicorn. Mm-hmm. It's Gaff telling him that he knows his memories because they too are implants.
Yeah. I think what the sequel then kind of sets up into how it could be is they basically allude to Tyrell then created Deckard to be attracted to Rachel and vice versa. That way they could try to procreate, and it worked. Like, that was Tyrell's whole thing, and then, of course, he had a pretty gruesome death.
Oh, God, yeah.
We didn't even mention, is it Rutger Hauer? Is that how you say his name?
Rutger, yeah.
Rutger, okay. Yeah. Which, rest in peace. But easily the best part of this movie.
Oh, my God. That is the part of
the Tears and Rain speech is just iconic, and when it comes up, it's 40 words? 42 words, something I thought. And it's like, it's so good.
And to a lesser extent, his little monologue to the character who creates the eyes. I think his name is Chew.
Yeah, let me look. Where are you, James? Yep. Hannibal Chew. There's a great name.
That is quite a name.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I wanted to bring up that Deckard also, just like Kay in the sequel, they get the crap beat out of him the whole movie. Not that they're both necessarily bad at their jobs, but this whole first movie, Harrison Ford just gets beat up, and he only actually kills one without much pushback once. I think he keeps getting bailed out and saved by stuff. Literally at the end, he has to be saved by Roy.
One of my college roommates, who was not Jake, had a running theory that Harrison Ford wrote it into all of his contracts from 82 through about 97, that in every movie he was in, he had to get beat up or tortured.
Empire, the board thing, the torture. So 1980 even.
Yeah, very true, very true. Air Force One. I want to say, Witness, Frantic. All this to say,
Presumed innocent.
Oh, absolutely. He has a thing for getting beat up.
Well, he's good at it. That's why the line in 2049 where he says to Kay, like, I used to do what you do. I was good at it. And I was like, you sure? And like Kay has a couple moments, like he beats Dave Bautista. He shoots a couple of the junk people, like he gets them off, but he gets beat up so bad in that movie. Like, because everyone knows the meme now of him looking at the giant Joy with, like, all the bandages on. It's like, yeah, he's been beat up, like, 5 times in this movie, and it's not over. He's about to get stabbed and shot by Love, like, 5 times, in the water fight at the end. So I just like how both main characters just get the crap beat out of them. So.
I really do.
I got nothing else.
All right.
That is one of my favorite movies of all time. Number 10. Stick around for next week for number 9.
Absolutely. So next week, Jake.
Oh, should we announce what we're watching?
Get the thing. Get the thing.
No,
Where is it?
Oh. This?
the
Yeah.
napkin. The napkin.
Yeah.
You want to do it?
What is it we're doing?
Just immediate
Oh,
shout
We're
out.
just saying whatever.
You just read it
socials
this way.
we're on.
And we forgot to write iHeartRadio down there. Just read it down.
Before next week.
If you can. What's my number 9? Jared,
Yeah,
what's
I
my
was
number
gonna
9?
say, What's Jake's 9?
Looper.
Okay.
We're watching Looper.
Yeah, before next week, tune into our social channels where you can find out what we got going on. What are the social channels?
Okay, socials. You've got your Facebooks. You've got your Twitters, if it's still around. We'll see.
It's also very funny.
Instagram, TikTok.
That means it's funny. Long-running joke from like a year ago.
You know how millennials love their TikTok. And podcasting through Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and whatever your podcatcher of choice is.
iHeartRadio is the one we forgot to put up.
We also want to thank Drew for being here. We look
Yeah,
forward
great.
to it. Whatever the next episode is. What is the other episode that he's going to be on?
Oh, so he was on the Godfather.
The number
So-
2. We'll just say that. Right,
Yeah,
it says
Godfather.
The
That
number
was last
2.
week.
Yeah.
He'll be back for
He'll
the
be back
number
for the
2,
number
which
2
is in
spot.
like a month or so, or
Right.
longer.
That would be
fun.
longer, yeah.
Well,
until then, thank you for listening to today's episode. We will see you next time. So, from all of us here at Off Slate Media, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.